Hi, welcome to GalaxyCon Talks Comics. I am your host, Mike Broder, along with co-host Patty Hawkins.
Hello.
Hi. So, Patty, tonight we have our special guest is Tana Ford. She is the artist of Silk from Marvel Comics. She Black Panther, Long Live the King.
Mm-hmm.
Her latest project, LaGuardia, is a HUGO Award and Eisner Award nominee. Black Panther, Long Live the King came in second place in the HUGO Awards in 2019. Mm-hmm. She's worked on Gem and the Holograms, Star Trek, Guardians of the Galaxy, Amazing Spider-Man, and she's here with us tonight.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for joining us, young lady.
My pleasure.
So we were talking backstage before we came on about, what you do in, when there's a global pandemic and we don't have comic conventions.
Yes. And so what do? You do things like this. You get together with virtual friends.
Yeah, it's
find a way.
We started right when the whole thing happened in March, mm-hmm. where there was, you're going to be stuck, we're all stuck at home. And so I just started calling up people going, hey, we're going to do this thing. And then we started streaming like every day. Yeah. And then after a while, we kind of broke it out from celebrities and comic people. And we have a celebrity thing over there. And we do the comic show now on Tuesday. And this is what we do. I love it. The future.
Oh, goodness. It is a brave new world.
Yeah. Where's my jetpack? That's all I want to know.
Behind you on the screen.
We all live in Florida.
Well, that's true. I've been wanting to do one of those hydro jetpacks for a while. So maybe this summer.
Yep. I have a swimming pool. I could try it out in the yield swimming pool. That would end terribly. I would not do that. Oh, no. And in fact, you can't go outside because it's Florida in the summer. It is July right now. I go to check my mail and my feet melt to the sidewalk. It's hot out, guys.
And you're a transplant from the north, yes. As I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, this is I have been in Florida for 7 years this weekend. I moved down on 4th of July weekend.
Oh, wow.
7 years ago.
Well, may the 7th year be the beginning of a change of luck for all of us here in the Sunshine State.
Oh, goodness. Let's hope. It's only
Did you break a mirror when you moved to Florida and you're for the whole state?
I know. I was telling all these terrible Florida jokes. Like, they're just going to, hand me a gun when I cross state lines. And, now I need to get an alligator. And, all of this stuff comes true, right? There's alligators everywhere. I wasn't expecting that. Another thing I wasn't expecting was how many beautiful birds there are. I got almost assaulted by a sandhill crane, which if you don't live in Florida, you may not know. They're 4 feet tall. These birds that are eye level, well, maybe a little shorter, but they walk right up to you and it's terrifying a little. But you get used to it.
And our big giant lizards.
Yes. And they have these long beaks. And,
they're nice when our neighborhood has a pair.
Yep.
And they just sort of do the rotation. You go around, and they're just.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we have a mated pair that shows their baby to us every year. It's the same pair that's been living here since before we had the house, and they'll fly into the yard. Our dogs are inside, but they still brave it, and they'll show off their baby. And anyway, so it's very much nature is always right here.
They're the most monogamous thing in Florida.
Keep them away from the villages.
And Tana, you were probably too old to get your free gun at that point. Yeah, so you're over 21. Right. You don't get.
That must have been it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. So, well, anyway, we were getting in trouble with the Florida Tourism Board. So, comic books, right? Hey, Superman, Batman, bam.
So the one cool thing about doing it this way. Mm-hmm. Versus conventions is at conventions I don't ever get to talk to you guys,
or you don't. And bar none, my favorite convention was the last SuperCon that you were in charge of in Florida, and it was amazing. You gave us this platform. I had volunteered. Oh my goodness! Speaking of guns, this is a terrible segue. Oh, this is a terrible segue. The Parkland massacre happened, and I volunteered my time with local teenagers to help them turn their experience of walking out of their high school into a comic book. I figured I don't know any other way to give back. I draw comic books. Like, I can try to help them turn their experience into a story, and we did. And Mike, you gave us a platform for these kids to get up on stage and talk about their work and talk about that experience. And I get chills just thinking about it. You changed the game for these kids. And you guys were amazing. You just, anything that you could have done for us, you did. You made myself and them feel so welcome. You know how to put on a show, my friend. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That was a really tough. The last couple of years in Florida have been really tough, and in connection with our show, it started. It started with the Pulse shooting.
Yes.
Where that happened right before our Miami show one year. And there was a lot of concern and a lot of our, our audiences or people that were affected by that. Yeah. And, we knew people that were, from Orlando. We have, friends. And so that was the first thing, and that was close to home. And then Parkland happened, right. I mean, my office where I'm sitting right now is 15 minutes from that school.
Yep.
And we were doing the show in Fort Lauderdale. I mean, we mainly did the show in Miami just because it was a bigger building, and that Fort Lauderdale building, those people are not easy to work with. But for the 2 years that Miami was under construction, we were in Fort Lauderdale, and those kids come to my shows or came to my shows. Those are my kids. And it's heartbreaking that, this happened.
Two of them that worked on the project had gone to SuperCon before, had gone for a couple of years. And I mean, we're talking about 16-year-olds, ages 14 to 16 that were working on this book. And I'm proud of the work that we did on this book. It's called March for Your Lives. And it was the story of the walkout. So Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School has the shooting, and then kids who had cousins in that school, whose friends were in that school, the West Boca High School staged the first nationwide walkout. And it was a spontaneous, passionate event that these kids just did. And it started the string of walkout protests in the nation. And these kids in the middle of a school day, not in the middle, in the beginning of a school day, walked 10 miles in the Florida heat to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School protesting gun violence. And so I helped those kids, turn that experience into a story that used all their own art, all their own words. They edited it themselves. I just acted as a functionary to provide space, materials, and knowledge for them to do this. And you guys gave them a platform to talk about that experience. And I get chills just thinking about it. This is our backyard. This is my backyard.
Right. And it happens all over the country. It's not just us. It happens everywhere. And there's nothing, it's very hard when these things happen. You want to do something, but you're limited in what exactly you can do. Yes. So, we had talked to there was a parent who was asking people to reached out, and we talked to her about the kids were coming back, so they wanted inspirational banners. So we talked to a bunch of comic book artists to get artwork to blow up into comic book banners to place around the school. But there's nothing, when there's so we did that, the thing with you, we gave tickets to all the students that wanted to come to the show. There's actually a documentary that got shot at the show that's going to premiere soon that has a clip in there of one of the kids from Parkland who came to the thing and told the story. But when there's a tsunami or when there's a hurricane or when there's something like that, you can raise money, right? There's no raising money for this.
Yeah.
What do you throw money at? You can't throw money at a thing. And the only thing that's going to change anything is education, better mental health in this country, and gun control. And we live in a state where they don't want to fix any of those things.
Nope. And I think what I know to be true about the comic book community, and especially about younger fandoms in general, if you give people, especially young people, a place where they feel listened to, valued, have their voices amplified, they gravitate to that space. They cling on to it. It becomes their own, right? Like they take ownership of that space. And that's what I experienced with these kids. They had already felt ownership over Florida SuperCon, and the idea that they got to have a piece of that, a shiny piece where they got to like, talk about their experience and making art and being a part of this huge, that's the thing I love so much and that I miss so much about comic book conventions. We are a found family. We are a community. And if, for somebody that works from home normally, and it's a very isolating thing, I love what I do and I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it's very isolating. I rely, and I did not realize how much I rely on going to comic book conventions to see human people that are interested in the same stuff I'm interested in, who, care about this stuff, who are fans of my work, of whom I am fans of their work, or there's that connection, and I'm missing it so deeply these days without it. I'm sure you guys are too.
Well, Patty and I are the same way. I mean, I've been doing these shows one way or another for almost 15 years. Yep. I've been going to these shows since I'm a kid, and it's all one big family. And what our job is in this office is, everybody who works for us, and it's the staff and the volunteers and everybody, is that we're putting on a gathering for people of a certain mindset to come and have a party, have fun and connect, and that's not happening right now. And Patty does it, when Patty hosts at the shows and does all the the Q&As and stuff, and talks to audiences of 500 to 1,000 to 3,000 people, and the heat in the room. We always talk about the heat in the room and the energy, and we don't have that energy to feed off of.
Yes.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, Mike, you said like we're a mindset. We have different mindsets. That's the really cool thing. We've got anime fans. Okay, we got the wrestling fans. We've got media fans. We've got Star Trek fans. And that's the nice thing, is we're getting this cross-pollination. And the nice thing is now is that the generational and fandom walls are starting to curate a little bit. It used to be very tribal. It used to be everybody was in their own lane. Everybody was a polite neighbor. Oh, nice costume, whatever that is. I know it's an anime, but whatever. We're starting to get more pollination, My Hero Academia has brought down a lot of walls. It's turning anime fans into comic book fans, and comic fans into anime fans.
Younger comic book fans.
Yes. My introduction to that was being asked to do art for it, to do commissions for My Hero Academia, and I was like, I don't know what this is, and so I had to like go through a rabbit hole of internet videos to find out, and I was like, oh, this is cool as heck.
Yeah.
And so that's me getting cross-pollinated.
That always comes to every artist, such as yourself, getting a commission. That day when. Who is that character? What is that? I don't get it. I remember the first time as a fan in the 80s when I was crestfallen that I asked for comic artist, and he was like, I don't know who Deathlock is. I'm like, but that's your profession. You're supposed to know all about this. And as a young fan, I was crestfallen, but it wisened me up to, okay, no, they're not the encyclopedias that I am.
Yes.
Okay? That part of their brain is all in their technique and their form and everything else. Just give them a reference and they'll do it. But
I learned very early on that if you wanted anything from an artist, you had to bring him reference material to.
It is, and I think it's getting better. Definitely reference material is always welcome because internet can be spotty. But when you have access to internet at a show, when you have good Wi-Fi, then the world is your oyster. And good gracious, like there are times at certain shows, if you, as an artist, I'm commissioned to do something that I'm not well known for, or it's a character I don't know well, and I want to get it right, or there's a certain time period or a certain costume that the client would like. And so I have to find good reference of those things. If I don't have internet at the show, then I'm back at my hotel that night, like scrolling through images, trying to find, stuff to save to my phone or to my tablet so that I can draw from it the next day.
Yeah.
So bring reference or have reference.
So what is the number one thing that you get asked to draw? Is it silk or is it something that you never worked on?
Yeah, so it's Silk, which is very heartening because I love that character very, very much, and I would love to see her in more things. And the whole Silk squad holds a place in my heart. So I get asked to do Silk a lot, and they're halfway through my tenure with Marvel when I was working on my 12 issues of Silk. I discovered quite by accident that there is a sketch cover, like a sketch blank that has a Silk logo, but it is not cardstock that you normally have for a sketch blank. It is on just regular paper. It was made for, I want to say Larry's Comics as a Phantom variant or something.
Okay.
And so you can find them, but I now have a few of actual Silk sketch blanks, and those are the thing that people will come to me to get. But I've done, a ton of other things as well. Anything in the Spider-Verse, any of the Spider Ladies, Black Panther stuff is very popular for me as well. Livewire over at Valiant Comics, I have done a bunch of.
Silk was interesting, and this is I don't put this blame on the other character, but I really felt like Silk was positioned and moving forward, and then everything was on a good pace. Then all of a sudden, Spider-Gwen, hey! And I just felt like all of a sudden the dogs started running in that direction.
Yes, and I had conversations with Robbie Thompson at the time, and even with Jason Latour, being like, what accounts for the difference? The Silk fandom, so we have Silk, we have Spider-Gwen. They're both sort of in the universe. We did this big Spider-Woman crossover event. It was wildly popular there, but why the emphasis on Spider-Gwen? And there was never really an answer. Maybe her iconic shoes, maybe other reasons.
Honestly, it was the Gwen Stacy connection.
Yeah.
It was the historical Gwen Stacy connection. Dan Slott, he tried to put Silk retro-con into that. And as far as origin retcons go, that's one I'm okay with. I really was. He got a lot of crap for that, but I was like, normally I'm not okay with it, but it makes perfect sense that the spider could have bit somebody else, and then they had this thing that they had.
So that's the problematic thing. You had a lot of, I think the complaint about it, the first iteration of Silk that Humberto Ramos drew and that Dan wrote, was that there was a fetishization of Asian women. And the idea behind it, the gimmick, was that Peter Parker's spider sense didn't go off when she was around him. And so Silk would just appear whispering in his ear, and they had this fetishized relationship. And it was problematic. And I think if you look at it at the time it was made, nothing exists in a vacuum. When Robbie came along, the writer that I worked with, who, full disclosure, I love very much. When he came along, he retconned this character into those things still exist, and they did date, but maybe, it was more friendly or something. Yeah. And they ended up as friends that had this thing in common, and we were able to deal with all of the big themes of a Spider-Man book or of a spider book. With great power comes great responsibility. We got to deal with friendships, female friendships, mentorship. Robbie was raised by therapists, and it was important to him to sort of unpack mental health stigma on the page, and to put that in a Marvel comic that kids are reading, that people like me are reading, and have Cindy Moon, Silk, unpacking her darkness with a therapist that is listening to her, that knows her secret origins, was really powerful and was intentionally powerful. She relies on her friends, who happen to be, you can see them in the back here. There's Lola and Rafferty. They are an interracial lesbian couple that get a happy ending. They get to do fun, crazy friendship adventures. This one happens in the negative zone. I think it was just an excuse for us to draw dragons and play with medieval stuff, because Robbie and I are both Game of Thrones fans. But so we got to do all of this very wholesome, very good stuff, while also having Silk, a Korean American woman, be our solo hero. So we've got women of color. We've got friendships. We've got female friendships. We are unpacking mental health stigma. We avoid big pitfalls like fetishization, apparently a word I cannot say, and also we don't kill our gays. You know, like I actually in a Marvel comic get to draw a lesbian wedding with an on-screen kiss from interracial people that have an authentic feeling relationship, right? Like I get as an out lesbian, as a masculine presenting lesbian, I got to draw people that are like me in relationships that look like my relationships. And there's something so deeply satisfying about that. And so I think uplifting about that. So retconning Silk was one of the best moves in my view that Marvel has ever made. And I just cherish that character and her whole universe. Even her relationship with J. Jonah Jameson is adorable, right? Like you just, I don't know. I look back on it with a lot of pride. I feel like we got a lot of things right there.
I think that you did once you retcon the story. The character has a very complicated backstory. It's not pretty. And when they introduced the character, she's been locked away for years, right? Like she's
in a bunker for 10 years.
Right. Yeah. Like that's Spider-Gwen's, oh, here's young blonde Gwen.
Yeah.
No baggage.
Yeah.
Here's Cindy Moon, your, Asian, character who's been locked in a bunker for 10 years and who has, trauma, like real trauma.
Yes.
And so I'll say a few things on that. I think a lot of people, a lot of the core comic book audience isn't comfortable with themes of trauma with young women or women in general. And as since the majority of comic book readers are older, men that look more like Patty and myself. And well,
you kids get off my lawn.
Yeah. But
get out of my comic shop.
When,
in a library.
And Robbie Rodriguez is a very good friend of mine, and I love Robbie to death. Okay. And I think that Gwen is an awesome character, and I love what they created and how he's been very protective of that character as well. The fetishization of Gwen.
It's a tough word.
Right, but look at what guys like Frank Cho have tried to do with that character, and other artists have turned her into this sex this sex vehicle, and Robbie's been very protected. Like, no, she's a teenage girl. Cut the crap. But it's easy. The character's not as complicated.
Yeah, and I could see that.
I would imagine, and then you and Robbie Thompson take over the book. You change, some things, and you make the character more. What's the word I'm looking for?
Palatable.
Palatable is not. I don't know the palatable is the word, but you take it in this direction, and I would imagine that the people reading the floppies aren't the main audience for a book like that. I would imagine that your audience is more of a digital audience or a collected edition audience.
Yes, I think so. I think we also skew younger. So I can only speak to my own anecdotal, evidence, but I get an enormous amount of young women and Asian American women and girls of all kinds that come up to my table during shows, and for whom Silk was revolutionary. They never saw somebody like themselves as this character, as this hero, and it is transformational, I think, for them in a lot of ways. And I mean, for me, that it's a feather in the cap, right? Like that's the audience I'm trying to reach. That's the demographic I want to be speaking to. And I think it's wonderful. And if, the crotchety old white guys will also read my stuff, but I'm not making it with you in mind. I'm making it with her in mind. And it will change her life in the way that the comic books you loved changed yours.
And we talk about that all the time. And that's been a very big problem for me.
Yeah.
That, look, we have these conventions, we draw tens of thousands of people. Yep. Our bigger ones, 50, 55,000 people. It's a lot of people. But I know that the majority of them aren't reading floppy comics.
Right.
And if we don't get new readers, if we don't get a younger generation in, our industry dies. And so it's great that Patty and I read comics, but we're older, we're older dudes, and most of the people that we know are aging out, and the audience you're looking for with Silk isn't necessarily going into comic stores. They don't feel comfortable in comic stores. They've had negative experiences in comic book stores. It's better now than it was, but it's still not great in a lot of shops.
There are many shops where it is wonderful. I used to live in Boston, and Boston has a plethora of really wonderful, exceedingly exceptional shops. And then I moved to Florida, and the comic shop near me is like I never felt unwelcome, right? Like I had lived in this sort of happy little bubble, and I get into this shop and I was like, oh no, and all the books are shrink wrapped, like even floppies. And I was like, what is the point of this? And anyway, so there are Florida shops that are also very good.
Yes.
But
there are some good shops in Florida, and there's some.
But where I live now, there's nothing around me, right? Like I used to have comic shops that I had access to. Also, when I was growing up, because I am very aged, they would sell comics in the supermarket and in the local like CVS's and things like that, and they don't sell there anymore. And so there's no access. That's how I first started picking up X-Men comics. And, the cartoon show led me to the comic book rack that my mom was already shopping at the store anyway. And so there's no inroads, right? And for a lot of people.
Well, and again, we talk about that all the time. We've had people on this show, specifically on this show, that Patty, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about, is how the systematic and destruction of the newsstand destroyed our hope of a future generation of comic readers.
Yeah. So do you have an answer to that? What's the answer to that?
Well, I do have an answer, but it's a complicated answer.
Yeah.
I believe that the future is digital.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the future is physical. I love physical. I want the future to be physical, but I don't see how that happens. The thing that has changed the only thing that's changed my outlook on that is that the young adult graphic novels are selling well in the Borders and the Barnes and Nobles, or the Borders is gone, but Barnes and Noble and other bookstores. So that format works, right? Yep. So the mangatization of comics, of the form, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But the problem in the digital world is monetization. So a lot of people, it's harder to make money with digital comics. Mm-hmm. So the problem that you're having is you have a lot of people downloading illegally, sharing. When Marvel puts everything up on Unlimited for a subscription fee, you can eat subscription fee, there's no money in that. Yeah. And then DC has a subscription thing with DC Universe, and there's no money there. Like, how do you as an artist make money off that model?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people be successful with Kickstarters and Indiegogos, but that's people that have found their own audience, through their own ways. We were going to do this huge initiative in our shows this year, starting with Harley, where I was trying to get with publishers to, get physical, get digital books to give away to everybody who get digital books to give away, email people who bought tickets.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, here's where you can download a bunch of free comics to get them going. And then we were going to work with some publishers on printing books to put into everyone's hands. Mm-hmm. That all fell apart when the world ended.
Yes. I mean, as everything fell apart.
But I think the answer is getting books into the right hands. Mm-hmm. Right. So like if you give a Batman book to the wrong person, it's useless. If you give Silk to the wrong person, it's useless.
Right.
You want to get the right book into the hands of the right person.
Right. But I feel like in this day and age, and with young people, especially those youngsters, they're very adept at going through the internet and finding their niche, finding the thing that they love and following it, creating communities. This is a thing that the generations below me are exceedingly good at doing. Things
but it
like
still
TikTok
has to make financial sense
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The artist, the creators fed. And
yes.
so,
As an artist who depends on people buying my work and consuming my stories, I agree.
And one thing about the younger generation from what I've seen is they're very good at finding the internet clubhouses, whether it's on Twitch or whatever. And the challenge on us is, okay, how do we poke our heads in the window there and say, hey kids, how you doing in there? Hey, I'm just gonna leave this here for you and we'll step away. And if you want more, give us a call. How do we do that without looking like the high school guidance counselor? I thought I'd rap with you kids for a while about how drugs are not cool.
Crack is whack.
Yeah. Tobacco is wacko if you're a teen.
Oh no. Dare to keep kids on comics. I don't know how you solve the problem, right? But I miss comic book shows. I have a lot of fans that come up to me in comic book shows and people that love this stuff and seek it out, and cosplay fandoms and kids who are super into this stuff and their parents, they're sort of dragging their parents around the shows. I think that's adorable as well. So I think my exposure to it is to see the enthusiastic side that is already participatory in what we do. I don't know. And also, I sort of naively believe in the power of story and communicating, that there is just something about that that thing that you can feel ownership over or feel connected to a stranger through the act of storytelling through words and pictures. I find it so compelling. And
there's another thing lost about the shows too, especially in your position, is that no matter what your following is on social media, for every person who follows you, you still have 5 people who consider themselves a fan of yours that aren't on that. And you've seen that at shows. I'm sure you probably, at the beginning, you're probably like, I'll probably do okay. And you've had people come up, I love your work. I love your work. I love your work. And when you get back on your phone and stuff, it's like, I had 200 people all weekend. They're great. And 3 people liked me. So there is that disconnect of, they're still about being in the trenches. About meeting them and keeping that thing going and trying to be what they hope you to be. Yeah.
See, and I feel like I don't know. So I care less about my social media presence. I don't quite understand how to work Instagram. I am a bit of a grandma. And Twitter is usually just a hole for more politics and like retweeting comics that I love that my friends are making. And so when it comes to social media, I am not that kind of an artist. And so
your work speaks for itself.
all of my communicating, I have a Kickstarter that I'm working on right now. And one of the things I did for my backers recently, I was like, oh, you guys haven't heard from me in a while. If you send me your snail mail address, can you see behind me that there's a typewriter on my desk? I rehabbed a 1949 KMG Royal typewriter that I found in a Goodwill in Florida for $20. Thank you very much. And I typed out letters to my backers and just whatever, and like sent that off. And, the book is coming, but like, this is what you're going to get today. And so for me, building community is micro. Like I have micro communities of people that care very much, I think, about what I do and what I'm making. And then I think there's also mid-range people who are just like, yeah, this is cool. I know that person. They do good work. And so like, I tend to water my garden. But I think the exception and not the rule when it comes to social medias. Well, hence typewriter.
No, I think the typewriter is a wonderful affectation. I think literally one of your fans getting an actual letter in the mail from you, and they see it. Wait a minute, this was made on one of those things that my parents had.
Oh man, it doesn't have. It's so old. It doesn't have a 1. Like the numbers just go 2, 3, 4, 5, and you have to use a lowercase L to make a 1. I also had to discover how to make an exclamation point. And a couple of the things that are on a standard keyboard are in the wrong spot. Yes. So as I'm typing, and it's like a manual thing. And it was weird because you don't power it up. Like I can just sit there in the dark or in the early morning, and I just start typing and it goes. Like, I know that is so basic, but it fundamentally is really beautiful. Like, it is a beautiful machine. It also has a dual color ribbon, and there's like this niche place where they will dye it. It's supposed to be black and red, but they make them in all different colors. So I have like a pink, a purple.
Oh,
like,
nice.
I'm transcribing poetry. Anyway,
Look,
so
there's something to be said about getting a physical letter from somebody.
Yes. So when you talk about like a book, a thing, an object that you love, right? Like that's, so I think print media is definitely changing. But for me, a person that loves tactile things, getting a letter in the mail, like reading that, having that thing, that object, it matters to people. And I think that it will continue to matter to people, but the stuff that we keep might be a little bit different, right? Like, it might be a collected trade, or you might just have smaller runs of individual issues and make your money on trades, but the issues are actually still collectible. Oh, look at that. See, you kept it. You kept an envelope that you got in the mail, I assume. Or maybe you make
his Marvel No Prize.
Yes. This envelope contains no prize, but like you saved that. You're able to go into the other room and get that, right? Like that's
actually, this was not sent to me. This was a reproduction that a friend gave, but I always wanted one. You know,
that's I don't know. So that's the stuff for me that feels special, feels good, keeps me connected, keeps me plugged in. It's why I think making stories at my typewriter and, you know, turning images into art and sharing them with people has an effect. I think it matters. It's the stuff that changed me when I was a kid. And so.
Right. And it's why people want autographs on a physical comic or a book. They don't want it on an iPad.
Yes. And so I think there's always going to be, and comics is very much a collector's thing. Like the niche that this corner of the universe is very collector centric. And so we love our objects. We love those things. And so I think that will continue, but it will be changing. It is changing.
Well, I do think that we're going to see an end to their traditional floppy. I think what you'll see is that in 10 years, it's going to be, you'll get the serialization online.
Yep.
And then you'll get the collected in a trade.
And I think that is a fine model, honestly. And if you love something, if you're in a place financially in your life where you love art, I'm an artist that I do layouts digitally, but I traditionally ink my pages. And so there are physical items that, you know, collectors and people that love the comics that I make can have in their homes. And so for me, there's still like, I am a tactile person. And so it appeals to me to have those.
My office is all,
right.
Well, these are movie posters, but I mean, I've got art by, artists all over the place.
This guy's got,
and I can't, you can't, it's got to be on physical, Bristol board or
I mean, there's something about it. I was sitting at last year's Emerald City Comic Con. God, what is time? I was sitting next to Jorge Molina, and this man, I'm watching him work. So it's Jorge, it's me, and then it's Erica, who drew Squirrel Girl for Marvel. Henderson, Erica Henderson. So there's just the three of us, and we're like around a corner, and it was wonderful. It was the best lineup. And so we're all just chatting all show, but I get to watch this man create a Daenerys Targaryen from nothing on mid-tone paper. And it is blowing my mind. Like the level that this man is working is just so good. His Batman stuff, like he was pumping out this stuff, the entire convention. And I felt like I was working next to God. Like I'm schmoozing with people. I'm doing my thing. I'm drawing the whole time. But like there is just fine art being created over here. And I felt like I was in a master class, right? Like he would ask to borrow, white pens or like whatever. And we were talking the whole time, but I'm like, this stuff is mind blowing, right? When you reach a certain level to be able to do those things, it's magical.
And it's a table skill, which, there was sometimes I've wondered if people have maybe to take like a 2-day online course about, okay, you're good comic book switch artist, fine. this is why you do a convention.
Yes.
Are you able to draw and talk at the same time?
Yes.
You know, and when do you know, can you put your pencil down and give somebody some attention, knowing that time and then getting back to commission? Or are you somebody that's just, you can pencil one, but then you're up all night doing the rest of them? And I have a lot of artist friends that are just like, I got time for dinner, and then I got to do 9 commissions.
Yep. And it is, I mean, and to each their own, right? Like everybody is, you know, Scotty Young is going to work very differently than Tana Ford is going to work, right? Like there's just, you have different artists who are going to do different things different ways.
Well, Scotty sneezes sketches. I've hosted sketch duels with him, and he'll be done, and then he'll do a something. You know, I'll give him some other side thing to do while the other person's catching up. You know. Oh
my God! And you know, Scott is one of those guys that he's just a delight. You know, and so like at this moment in history, I'm especially happy for the good ones, and you know, and for the gemstones. Anyway, so anyway.
Well,
not to turn
okay. So you're saying this moment in history.
Yeah.
This is a moment in history.
Yeah.
So it's things have to happen. There's always progress. The world has to progress forward.
I was talking with a woman that I am friends with in comics, and our experiences in comics are different. She's coming from a fan perspective. I'm coming from I want to be a comic book artist, come up through the ranks perspective. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough when I was coming up to have been taken under the wing by people who knew the industry. And my first experiences in a Comic Con, like hotel bar, I had people with me that would say, this guy's lecherous. This guy's a creep. He's gonna get super drunk tonight. Avoid that guy. And they were pointing out the missing steps for me. And it was still a very, you know, a new environment. I remember feeling very wide-eyed and sort of taking it all in. But it was definitely, I mean, I don't spend a lot of, I'm a gay woman. I don't spend time in straight places in my life, really. Like I don't hang out in hotel bars where like guys are getting drunk and hitting on women. And I mean, you know, I don't know if that sounds douchey of me or what, but like these are not my spaces. So there was a level of unfamiliarity with it anyway. And so I remember being creeped out by a lot of the behaviors on display, but also feeling apart from it. Like I don't know this world. I'm just getting into it. I have somebody, you know, I have people who are being protective of me. So I felt like I was in a safe place, but that outside of that friend bubble, it was like, here's a danger. Here's a missing step. Here's a danger. And I have a friend whose experience as a fan coming up was none of that. There's nobody in her ear telling her, watch out for this guy. This guy's going to get handsy. You know, this guy has several outstanding sexual assault cases against him, but still gets work. Like nobody is telling her that. Right. And, you know, and I'm not in a position when I'm being told that to pick and choose any of my projects anyway. I got very lucky. The people that I have worked with have been very good. And you know, my Marvel editors were wonderful. I got to work with Heather Antos at Valiant Comics. I've worked with Karen Berger at Dark Horse. Like I've had exceptional people in my corner, but holy shit, it is a terrifying nightmare place out here.
Comics are no different than any other business or industry, we'll say.
Yeah.
And what happens is when people have power, people do things, and then there's different types of people who take advantage, you know, people who know what the lines are. And in comics, it has been a boys club for, you know, 70, 80 years. It is a place of, you know, it is a testosterone driven industry. Look at what most of the comics that are published are. And then you even have the guys who are, you know, who are woke, who are creepers, who are using that as their shield.
And this is the thing. And, you know, and so you have to, a person in my perspective is looking around and saying, how do these men continue to get jobs? Why is your response to a serial sexual offender why is your response as a company not going to be, we fire him,
right?
But you're going to give him an entire office where no women are allowed to work, and he's still doing things in the community.
And the problem with that is, like I said, comics are just like any other industry. The majority of people in comics are great people, nice people, would never do these things. The people you're talking about are a very limited few amount of people who are the monsters, right? Except it's like the police. It's like in the film industry or the anime industry, which we just went through a thing last year. Why is it that the people who are problems aren't outed and taken care of, like you said? It's no different than, all the problems that we're having with cops. Most cops are great. Most cops are good, except there's some bad cops. And if you're a good cop and you let the bad cops get away with the bad stuff, you're not a good cop.
And, and then we have the video of that 70-year-old man being pushed over and all the other cops walking by.
Exactly. Those cops are all bastards.
And but that's how it is, right? This is the maddening thing, because that's what it's like in comics. So I have this, this protective person telling me, watch out for this guy, watch out for that guy. Why does that guy still have a job? Why do I need this guy telling me, watch out for that guy? Right?
Well, when you said this is a moment of time, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And weirdly enough, this was kind of learned behavior. This was a mindset and it is. And another guy I've noticed too at the hotels, the bars, is it's not a monolithic boys club. It is cliquish.
Oh my God, it's so cliquish.
Yeah, that's what it is too. There's a group that you can hang with, it's cool, but if you try to gravitate towards this other group, whatever, they're like, nah, whatever.
It's super cliquish.
So it's not like all the professional comic artists with it too. There's these little subgroups, and those are for lack of a better term, those are the frat guys who are always the bad guys in the movies.
But there's different, and there's lines, and there's levels, and there's so Patty and I've been going to conventions for 35 years, right? Conventions. Okay. I started going when I was basically 9 years old. Conventions have always been a place of, hanging out, partying, congregating.
Yeah. And
so the bars have always been there. I mean, not when I was 9, but I remember hanging out the bars when I was a teenager and older. And there's a hookup culture involved in the conventions, and there's a hookup culture with fans and fans. There's a hookup culture with pros and pros. There's a hookup culture with pros and fans. And there's fine lines, right? Like it's a very fine line. And there are things some people should maybe be a little bit more professional, and maybe some people need to not drink so much.
Oh my God. And this is, I mean, I don't, for me, it is always I'm there to work. I'm there professionally. Also, this isn't my pool to choose. When I'm thinking, I'm in a relationship. I love my girlfriend very much. We are solid, but when I am dating, this is not the pool I date in. This is not where I go fishing. And so for me, it's always this is my work situation. And I think for many people, I mean, I'm not the person to ask about this. For many people, maybe that overlaps. Maybe that's,
but you can see it as an outsider. You can watch it and see it. And you could take a very, you can take an overview perspective and watch it happening.
Yeah.
As it's a thing. So you're not in it as much as you're, looking at the view.
But the whole thing is, the microcosm of the relationships at comic book conventions, I feel very much like an outsider. I feel like my relationship with Silk Squad people that come up to my table, or the family members of the March for Your Lives that came up to my table, I am consistently surprised and impressed with the kinds of fans and outsiders and queer community that gravitate toward my table and my space in a convention show. So even inside the bigger show, right, which is what you guys do, I always have this little, this beautiful little pink bubble where it's to me, it feels more wholesome. It feels more connected. There's a small little queer community that I bring with me everywhere I go, and so for me, I don't know, it feels like,
but there's also challenges with that, because there are people in the queer community as well who will take advantage.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so historically, I try to, if we know that there's somebody who's a problem, if I know that there's somebody who there's an issue with in anything, I tend to forget that they exist and not invite them back and prevent them from coming back. And so there are a number of people, a lot of voice actors. There are some voice actors who had been at the show at some point in time or the other who no longer join us because of some predatory behavior, and not even some of the ones that you'd think of that made the news. There's some others that there are talents who would use the platform to get younger fans.
Yeah, and it's
be predators.
I think what it really is whatever it is, comics or a voiceover, whatever. Too, when you come to these shows, you're elevated. Yeah. All day, people are coming up to you, telling you how awesome you are.
Yeah.
And anybody's ego is going to get susceptible to that, and you get. You start to you don't drink the Kool-Aid, but you sip it enough where you actually believe you might be a rock star.
There has to be an industry policing. There has to be, your contemporaries have to police. It's unacceptable. Like in the one thing that is known in the anime industry is Vic Mignogna. I don't know if you're familiar with that story. Who's a voice actor who it came out, about a year and a half ago that there were incidents with him and some women who were friends of ours, women who are very, very close friends of ours that are voice actors that he was inappropriate with. There was a lawsuit. There was all sorts of things, but the industry protected him, and his contemporaries are like, oh, well, that's just Vic. Oh, you know what? And then it all comes out, and then you're like, goddamn, how, like, we all knew that he was like a little off, but we didn't know that he was grooming young women. We didn't know that he was.
It just, the whole thing it just makes my skin crawl.
Well, and the thing about this too is that, and Mike and I have talked about this. If any of these people, the people peers, said, "Dude, you can't do this," if they had just nubbed it right in and then right away, like, okay, you know what? Hey, man, come on, what are you? She's a 19-year-old fangirl. You're gonna ask her to go up to your room, man? Let it go, whatever, If it stopped into this, then I think a lot of that behavior wouldn't have been emboldened. It wouldn't have been curbed. And then as they got on, it got worse and worse and worse. And then you hear these stories.
Don't be a creep.
And if Mike Noah, who from all accounts is a decent guy, would say to Scott Alley, "Hey, cut the shit. Don't do this, or you're gone."
I mean, the details of Scott Alley's abuse are absolutely
atrocious,
stomach churning. And
people
we should steer away from this. I found out recently that Isaac Asimov was a notorious predator, the father of science fiction, or not the father, but like one of the main science fiction guys, had been protected and was as lecherous and inappropriate and exploitative as a human being can possibly be, and was utterly protected and coddled by the industry.
Gene Roddenberry.
Gene Roddenberry, yep, same thing.
And you're not going to find a bigger Star Trek fan than me. I
love Trek.
Right, but I'll tell you the fundamental difference.
Yeah.
The fundamental difference is Isaac Asimov was following the rules of a different time, and while it's still wrong in any time,
it was wrong in that time. It was still wrong in that time.
However, yes.
Human decency matters. You can look through history and see people who had human decency.
Yes, but it was more common. It was common. It was common. It was not. I'm not saying it's right. It's wrong.
And that's why so many, like, it took until now, it takes until today for women like me to get into an industry like comics. Think about how many women, how many editors, how many artists were run off because of not because of their work, but because of.
But let's call it 100 years ago, women couldn't vote.
I mean,
women got the right to vote. Women got suffrage in what, 1920? 1920. It's been 100 years since women got the right to vote. So when about the thing with Asimov or Roddenberry or whatever, you're much closer to that 100 years ago when women were not allowed to vote. When
that doesn't make me feel better, though, Mike.
No, but we're, like I said earlier, we're progressing as a culture, right? We're getting better. And so the things that were socially acceptable, and I say this as a 45-year-old white man, the things that were acceptable when Patty and I were growing up are not acceptable now, or that we're forgiven. Oh, boys will be boys. We were all told boys will be boys. Oh, you're presented with these Captain Kirk-esque heroes, and so let's go emulate Captain Kirk, right? Like and Kirk's not even a bad role model as much as some of the other male action heroes that we were, and so
but easily misinterpreted,
right? But in 2020, it's we know better. Right. And social media exists and the world is a smaller place. And so progress has to occur and progress has to happen and progress has to happen fast. And so, no, what Asimov did was unacceptable then and should be unacceptable now. But now we got to do better.
There wasn't, in Asimov's case, there wasn't a social system in place, I think, to put the brakes on it.
Right.
And I think, and again, if it had been the first time, Isaac, you can't do this, man. It's not cool. Yeah. Okay, you're right. Yeah. I
don't think it takes. I don't think it's one guy saying stop doing that and it cures the problem.
Well, it's a system. It's a system.
It is absolutely a system.
But I say this again as a guy.
Yep.
Part of the guy code is to being a good wingman and being a good friend is let your buddy know when, especially in a singles or a drinking situation or whatever, I've interceded my guy friends, outside of the comic world. It's like, dude, no, this isn't right, man. This isn't right. No. Oh, okay. All right. Let it go. Haven't done it in like 15 years. So I'm aging out of that point, but yeah, in my 20s, in my 30s, yeah, that's part of the guy code is to not do something that's gonna be bad, bro. I do not say that as a defense. It's just an observation. And again, this is just a social evolution.
Yeah. We have strayed from comics a bit, my friends.
LaGuardia.
This is comics. This is comics now.
I know.
Whether we like it or not. But yes,
well, the funny thing is, okay, hang on. So the funny thing is that comics have. There's a funny thing is that you have the Comicsgate guys who are like, take your social issues out of my comics, right?
I know those guys.
But social issues have always been an important part of comics.
Yes. I mean, Captain America is punching Hitler. Come on. Like, comics are political.
Captain America is punching Hitler. Spider-Man is dealing with drug issues. Green Arrow, Green Lantern are dealing with drug issues. Yeah. There's
Susan Storm wouldn't have talked Ben Grimm into going on the rocket ship until she said, "Do you really want the commies to beat us to the moon?" Literally, that's what got Ben Grimm on the Fantastic Four,
See?
Yeah.
Comics are political. Comics are always political. And, this is, I don't know. Life is political. Living your life, if you're not living your life in a political way or with a political mindset, then you have privilege, my friend. Some people are not able to look away from politics because these things affect our lives, our livelihood. In my lifetime, I can marry federally. I can marry my girlfriend. The gay marriage exists in the world. Because of politics and actually because of a union between a Republican lawyer and a Democratic lawyer that came together to defend marriage to the Supreme Court. Like these things are happening in my lifetime, right? Like the world as it is today is very different than it was when I was a child, and it is more inclusive now, and it is more representational now. And I have media that can show me all kinds of things, including, I love Star Trek very much, but things like The Expanse. Give me sci-fi, outer space stuff that also have people of color in it. Fan-fucking-tastic, right? Like nuanced characters. And I don't know. I could stand on my soapbox. I mean, this is the thing that I love so much about storytelling at this moment in history. This is the thing that I think is the heart and soul, the engine that drives the greatest stories that are being told right now. And I just...
But you... As a capitalist, as a very, very firm capitalist, I have always felt that if you want to succeed in business, you have to cater to audiences, and there are audiences for all these different types of things.
Yeah.
Right. And so why stick to one? So my shows have always been very all over the place, right? People say, oh, you have this, right?
Yeah.
And my answer is, well, I want this audience. I want this audience. I'm going to bring in that. So we're bringing, creators of all types, because my customers are of all types. And it's not my it's not about my personal preference. It's about what, the attendees' preference is. And
I think, yes.
The funny thing about it all is that capitalism at its heart should be about giving options to people, different, races, colors, creed, sex, religion, whatever. And it's not like it's
when any of us go to Publix, do we all buy one of everything? No.
Sure.
We buy what we want, what we need, what we're interested in. And
so comics really, the biggest, comics really in the 60s got away from, in the 40s, you had crime comics, romance comics, Western comics, all these different forms of comics, horror comics. And for decades, it shifted away from that. It's coming back now. We're starting to get, really great voices and really different voices in comics, but that went away for a very long time.
I mean, so one of the collaborators that I've worked with for the last several years, starting with our work on Black Panther at Marvel, is Nnedi Okorafor. She is an African futurist. She tells stories that are centered in a way that stories that normally take place in outer space or sci-fi aren't centered in. She has a lot of female protagonists, almost exclusively. She tells stories that are women-centered, that are about African people, Black people, American people, that, our story, LaGuardia, is a riff on Will Eisner's The Contract with God.
Contract with God.
Yeah, and which took place, which was a foundational story in graphic novelature, helped launch the form of graphic novelature, and told stories from an immigrant perspective in New York City. Those immigrants were predominantly white, if not exclusively white, and Jewish. But the stories he told were real and immediate. And there is an element of that, a germinating seed of that in the story that Nnedi and I set out to tell with LaGuardia, which includes people who are Nigerian American, actual literal aliens, Zulu, like we've got people from Sudan. All of these things are the cover that I drew for it, and I could not have predicted this, is an actual protest for equality, for justice. They're marching over the Brooklyn Bridge. It is a protest led by a pregnant Black woman, right? Like, this is my jam. This is what I speak to. These are the comics that I care about. These are the stories that I care about telling. And I, who could have predicted we would have, huge mass riots and protest movements and be in the middle of the biggest civil rights movement in our country's modern history right now, while this is the book that is up for an Eisner Award at the end of the month, the HUGO Award this year. These are the stories that matter. We are using modern allegory to talk about shit that's happening right now, through a perspective, through a lens that is not centered in whiteness, that is not centered, I was going to say in straightness, but I bring a visual perspective, my own sort of, not queer lens, but I frame things with women front and center, with queer people front and center in a lot of what I do, with Black and brown people front and center. The way that I chose to frame LaGuardia and shoot this book really, I was striving to show humanity, even in all of these different cultures blending together, and have my art mirror Nnedi Okorafor's words. And so this is my whole jam, right? Like, this is the thing that I care about the most in the world, is telling stories like this for people like me and who love what I love and who can learn to love these things.
And that's the beauty of what's happening, with the forum these days, is that there are different voices putting out new, interesting, books. Nnedi with this and Black Panther, Tana Ford, writing comics.
Oh my God, Ta-Nehisi is so great.
Who would have, and John Ridley, doing books. We had Georges Genti on the other day, and they worked together on The American Way, and just some amazing voices. And it's frankly, when at the shows, I mean, my I don't want to see a sea of white at my show, right? And I don't want to see a sea of I want to see a sea of different colors. I want to see all the colors of the rainbow. I want to see everybody coming, and it's we don't want to live in an echo chamber and in a bubble.
Yeah.
And when I do our LGBT panels, our capes are rainbow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're getting audiences getting a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger and more and more and more. And
the very first comic. So when I entered comics, it was relatively novel to have one panel about queer comics. Like it was just like, I was at the beginning and it was like a queer comics panel. And it was just this thing that was like, queer comics are great. We should have them. And now you have all of these niches of like queer representation in this media or that media or this specific property or, and
no longer the homogenized. Yes. Here's the obligatory gay panel. And you can talk about whatever you talk about when you get together.
Big comics need to be more.
And the room would be sold out, or not sold out, but like it would be standing room only and people couldn't get in. The need for this kind of thing. And now I see it shows entire alleys and programming that are queer based and, and queer adjacent, talking about different creators, different fandoms, all kinds of the things, like from serious issues to whimsical, nonsense issues, or podcasts and things. And I love seeing that. You love to see it. Like there's room in the big tent of comics for people that love this stuff who are like me. People who love this stuff and don't necessarily have to love what that guy over there loves, right? Like we can still be under the same big tent.
Queer representation needs to be more than North Star coming out in Alpha.
Oh my God. I know.
Right? And you said something about queer, the you're seeing pride alleys or queer alleys.
Yes.
I thought about it, and I'm going to tell you why I didn't do it.
Okay.
Because I don't want there to be a queer ghetto. And hear me out. I'm concerned that if I make a section in the show, which is a queer section, and I separate queer creators from straight creators, then it doesn't force everybody to flow through. And
I would say that it depends on your programming and how well you can blend these things together. You could consider partnering with people like Prism Comics or Geeks Out, or people that, work with queer comics and integration, if that's something that interests you. But I think that there is a way to overlap the two things that interlaces. And as we were talking about, bringing it back to center, cross-pollinates things. So it wouldn't be exclusionary, it would be inclusionary.
Right,
the idea is inclusion.
Right. My whole thing is that I like making people see everything. And I want people that to experience everything and see the different, like I could see putting a group together, in a row. But I've seen some shows have a whole sign up and you can go in this section. And my concern in that, well, that's what I meant. There's one large show that I was looking at their page, and it's like, you could sign up for our queer alley. One of the big shows.
Yeah.
I was like,
so I like the idea of a queer alley. I don't know about it being exclusive or non-inclusive. All of the queer alleys that I am familiar with, and granted, I have been guests at them, and I've gone to shows or I've gone to talks that I've been interested in, but I don't design them. But the focus has always been on inclusion and not on exclusion. So I'm unfamiliar with you have to sign up to get in here method. If it isn't like you be on the panel, yes or no, like if it isn't, trying to put together actual programming.
Because what I've learned with comic book guys in general is that I early days, I would put all the comic book dealers together and we'd have the comic book aisles. And then you would just watch as people would just avoid those aisles and just kind of divert around them because they don't read comics. They don't like comics. They weren't, and they didn't. They just avoided them. And I'm like, no, I'm going to put the comic guy next to the plushie guy, next to the pop guy.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be exposed to everything. Now you could still choose to walk around it, but you're going to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I think I lean in the middle ground that I see it as is I think Mike is the right idea of just having Artist Alley be a big blended melting pot and you walk through. But I think programming wise,
that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the programming alley where like the stuff that's queer themed. But like Artist Alley, all the Artist Alleys I've ever been a part of, you know, the only separation would be if like there are like famous guests of the show and then everybody else is kind of in a mix up or something.
So what you're talking about is
I'm totally about a programming track.
Yeah, so I'm talking about programming.
Tracks. Yeah, there's tracks, which is the programming, and then the alley, which is the physical positioning. When you're not at a panel.
Is it different than like a large art dealer that Essential Sequential comes to mind? He has those beautiful purple banners or whatever, but he'll have like a block of artists all together. Is it that kind of a thing where it's run by, you know, people putting together their own artists? Or are you getting people requesting a certain like alley, of Artist Alley for just queer people?
I saw a big show, and I'll tell you later.
Okay.
That has a checklist on their thing. Yeah. Hang on, I'm putting in the private chat. So the specific show I just mentioned has a thing on their exhibitor thing.
Oh, that one. Okay.
That says, you know, you want to be in Pride Alley, and Pride Alley is I call it the queer ghetto.
Yeah.
Where they're going to have a section of the show which is just for queer artists.
Yep.
Separated.
So what if I don't know. I don't think I've ever I've certainly never sat in a intentional Pride alley. But I have been seated next to other queer people. Usually I'm in a mix mash with other folks. And we always find it doesn't matter. But what if there's some sort of a protective measure here? What if there are really hateful trolls that will make it a point to assault people who are perhaps alone at a table that may think twice about assaulting all of the gay people in one room? I mean, I don't know. If
you're talking about Artist Alley,
I'm going to tell you two things. In 15 years, I have had very, 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 very few incidents of note on my show floor with this kind of a problem.
Okay.
What are you going to say?
I was going to say, is it, my questions would be, is it an issue of reporting? Do you feel like people would make you have always been very approachable. I find you one of the most approachable guys that has ever put together a show, and a very hands-on guy, which is why I'm here right now. I think that you guys do a really solid job, but is it an issue of reporting? And
if somebody makes somebody feel uncomfortable at my show, they're gone. If somebody goes up to a artist and causes a problem, they're gone.
Okay.
As a case in point, and I won't name, in my Louisville show, there's an artist who is very close to me. Very close. A friend, a dear friend. And he got upset. He's a little conservative.
Okay.
And I'm going to write it in the quote.
This hot goss, you guys. It's all, I mean, I'm here for this tea.
He was upset that there was a publisher on the floor that had liberal-leaning comics based on politicians as superheroes.
Okay.
AOC, Bernie Sanders, etc. And he got irate about it and wanted them gone. And I had to explain to him that he could leave the show. And then we were very close. But I said, I will not tolerate any form of, and that's how seriously I take and people will tell you how close I was to this man. But people will tell you that I don't tolerate it.
I can confirm that, seeing the name right now, I can absolutely 100% confirm this.
And and I chalk it up to a lot of issues, but I think it's we do have people that have complained about guests that I have at my show for political reasons, and I have guests of all kinds. I have guests that are of all the spectrum, and as long as they're not hateful, I'm not. If somebody's conservative, it's okay, but not if you're hateful.
Yeah.
If you're hateful and conservative, I don't want you. And if you're progressive and hateful, I don't want you. Yeah. I want people that are.
We are living through dangerous times, my friends.
Yes, and so I have found, and whenever there are problems, if it gets reported, I'll have my security come deal with it, and we'll eject somebody. We don't really have that problem. I find that in our shows, because our shows are, look, to go to a Comic-Con like ours, you got to be a fan of this stuff, and if you're a fan of this stuff, you tend to be a little bit more open-minded. I'm not going to say that we haven't had issues. There are, but I'm going to say that it's not a lot. And I think that the risk of that, of a problem happening by separating, by putting people all together is better. I think it's better to have it a young person who's looking to come out.
Yeah. Will feel safer in a queer space that they know would be welcoming.
Hang on.
Perhaps.
If somebody has not come out yet and they are thinking about it, they don't want to be seen going into the queer space. But if they're walking through a normal thing and they're exposed to something and they can have a conversation with somebody at a table.
Yeah, there's merit there. Yeah, I could see that.
Open their mind. I don't see that. Look, hypothetical.
Yeah.
Young boy or girl goes to a show. They're with their parent. They're 13, 14. They're on the cusp. They're thinking. They don't know. 15. The parent walks away over there. The parent is watching them go through the show. If they're afraid to go to the queer alley because they don't want to be seen by their friends going there, they don't want to be seen by their parents, they don't want to be outed, they're not ready to come out yet.
So I have a sign that I made out of necessity one year at Boston Comic Con that I've kept at my table because it is beloved. And it says, this table contains lesbians. And the S is crossed out because I had my friend Katie with me at the time. And anyway, so it's just this table contains lesbian and there's a little rainbow flag. And I just put it's a little half folded and half sign and it sits on my table and I keep it with me and I take it show to show because it acts as a beacon for that exact kid. And this surprised me, it acts as a beacon for that kid's parents. I've had dads and moms come up to my table while their kid is off doing whatever and want to talk to me about what it is like to be queer in this industry, just gay shit in general, or what comics their kid can be reading, or just to have a human conversation with somebody who is like living as an out person doing this thing that, we all love. And that sign is a flashing sign to a lot of queer youth, kids, and then surprisingly to me, a lot of kids' parents. And so wherever I am in the show, I try to be the most authentic person that I can be, right? Like I can only be my own weird self. And so myself is making comics that have female protagonists, queer people, Black and brown people, women of color. Like that's my brand. That's what I do. And I'm also gay. And I want people to know that and to see that. And avoid me if you want to avoid me. I don't care. Do whatever you want. But it ends up being a beacon to people that really crave that kind of connection with that kind of a creator.
I can go even deeper. I don't believe in segregation. That's my problem. I don't believe.
We have touched a lot in this comic book conversation this evening.
Think about Raina Telgemeier.
Yes.
Drama.
Yes.
That's not just for people, it's not just for, it's not for any, it's not just a queer comic.
Yeah.
It's for everyone.
Well, yes. And everyone. Yeah.
And so that doesn't I think that there is I don't want to ever with anyone suggest that anyone's work isn't meant for everyone.
However, I will say, as a person that believes deeply in the power of community, that there is, and how you handle it, how it should be handled is not for me to say. But what I can speak to is the power of having a queer community. So when I am at a show,
I have an answer to that.
When I am at a show with friends of mine and queer people around me, then I feel like usually my conversations are better. I'm going to have more in common with, yes. Erica Henderson and Jorge Molina, who is like amazing, but like definitely is not a lesbian from Boston like I am. Like, so, you can find things in common with other people, but you stick me next to a certain kind of comic creator and I'm going to have a bad time because we are polar opposites and there is no inroad there. Like
we get requests all the time from people who are getting artist alley tables on who they want to sit with.
Yes.
I find that's the best way to handle it is for a group to say, hey, we're coming in as a group. There's 10 of us or there's 5 of us. We want to be together. Yep. And that's how I think you do it. I think you take
I think that is I think that can be an excellent way to do it.
And plot them in the middle. But getting back to Star Trek, infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Which is what I did. I got to create a lesbian Spock. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. I did.
This, for my little like gay nerdy heart, for my lesbian Spock to be with Uhura in her own universe, but to still be perfectly Spock was just it was so great. And I got to do other fun stuff in the episode, like make a gas Scotty. Come on. I mean, I'm here for the puns, but I stay for the queer content. It was. So
Star Trek. You love Star Trek.
I love Star Trek.
Okay. When did you start loving Star Trek?
I fell in love with it in the middle of Star Trek, The Next Generation, maybe in the early seasons. It was being streamed live, when we didn't have DVRs or anything. So like I'd have to finish my dinner really quick. And like, I think I caught an episode once by accident. I didn't know it was Star Trek and they were on the holodeck and I was into it. Maybe it was a Sherlock Holmes episode. And I was like, what is this?
Yes.
And by the time I get to the end of it and I'm like, is this Star Trek? I should hate this, but I like secretly loved it. That I would finish my dinner and I would like watch it every night at 7:00 or whenever it was on. And if I missed it, I was super sad.
I'm reminded of how old I am. The fact that you referred to it as back when it was streamed through the air.
Broadcast television. It's called broadcast television.
Patty and I are a lot older than you.
I don't think you are.
A time before Next Generation.
I'm older than everybody. Trust me.
A time of he's.
How old are you? I mean, I feel like I need to know. Woo! I am going to be this year. Did I do that right?
Oh, congratulations, Mazel Tov. That's
so we're not that far apart.
Hey, you don't look
but you know what?
I don't look it.
We're 5 years apart, right?
Yeah.
But that 5 years is so different because I remember when Next Generation came on. It was the summer of it was the fall of '87, and I remember going. I was 12. Right. I was 12, but I had already had Kirk Trek. Like I grew up on Kirk Trek, and so by the time right, because
that's fine.
At the same time that I'm 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, you're 7.
Yep.
So when I was 7 is when I started on Kirk Trek.
And I probably didn't find, so I definitely didn't find the early seasons because I remember seeing Riker without any facial hair and like the very awkward first season of Star Trek was very bad.
We've talked to him a few weeks ago. Mike and I had a conversation with him. We're all about that.
It was rough, but then, they hit their stride in the middle years and I just grew to love it. And so that was my introduction. Star Trek, The Next Generation is my Star Trek. I have not seen all of Deep Space Nine, but I've seen a good chunk of it. I was doing a watch through and then something happened, like it went off the rails or somewhere, and I just put it down and didn't pick it back up again after Worf. And anyway,
you can always go back if the mood suits you.
I think it was the alternate universe stuff was a little like too much for me. Kira whatever her name was, like being just like. They were all just a little too much. Like it was a little too campy for me at that particular moment. I think there's a time for it. I just wasn't in that space.
Well, that was the first time they went back to the Mirror universe. From the original series with Spock with the beard and all that.
That's right.
And I've always been a big fan of it should be left alone. It worked perfectly the first time. Yeah. And in comics and everything else.
I'm a let's beat it to death kind of guy.
It's become a staple in every fandom now that you have a parallel universe where the good guys are bad guys, the bad guys are good guys. Well, from an artist perspective, though, case in point, you got to draw alternate versions of the characters.
Loved it. I got to do a plant-based Kirk, a plurk. Again, I'm here for the puns. Oh, but it was so good. A Spock that grew up human, so lived on Earth with his human mother, and so surgically altered his ears so that he would appear human. Spock. Oh, I'm here for it, man. Oh.
D&D.
Ah, I love it.
What edition?
So 5th edition. I'm a late comer to Dungeons & Dragons, so I'm playing the most recent version, which is 5e. I didn't have it when I was a child, and not because of Satanic Panic, but just because we didn't have it. I had a lot of cousins. I grew up with a big family, but we just didn't have it. And we had G.I. Joes and stuff and played baseball and whatever instead. But so I came to it late, but I love it. And this weekend I just got Matthew Mercer's, Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, and I have just fallen into that little universe.
My D&D books are downstairs, but I did hear you say G.I. Joe.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I was doing a pinup for friends of mine who do a podcast, a Game of Thrones podcast that they spun off into a His Dark Materials podcast from HBO. Mm-hmm. And so I drew this pinup as fan art for them. I don't often do fan art, but I love them deeply. And I can show it to you. It's right here. And I drew one of them that looks way too much like the Baroness from G.I. Joe. And I was like, I can't finish it now. It's too much like G.I. Joe.
That's a beautiful piece, though.
Thank you. I put their cats in it as I made a platypus. This is my dog Mila. There's like little nods, the monkey from the show, if you're into the show. And so like I did a lot of like Easter eggs in there. But then when I drew one of them looking exactly like the Baroness, I went into this G.I. Joe spiral and I was like, I don't know where to go from here. This isn't, it's like mixed up in my head. So my plan is to finish it before the second season drops and give it to them then. Things we do.
So you're a late comer to D&D. How'd you get in?
What was
how do you come in late?
Comic books. So I'm at a New York comic convention that I think was FlameCon, which is a purely gay comic book convention, and one that I love very much. And the woman that was helping me was very much into a new thing, which was called The Adventure Zone, which is a podcast run by...
We've had them at our shows.
Okay, they're great guys.
Yeah, we had them in... Well, they live in Kentucky, but at least the
West
brothers.
Virginia, they're from, I think.
West Virginia. But they came to the Louisville show.
Yep. And, I love them.
Yeah.
And it was just this vibrant, exciting. So I'm at this show and I know nothing about the Adventure Zone.
And the comic.
Yes. And the comic hadn't yet come out, but an art book had come out. And there were a ton of cosplayers. I have my dice right here. I don't know why it's in a little. Look at these dice. Isn't it nice?
Here's an old school first edition plastic D10. When you would get, it would come with a little crayon, and you would rub the crayon on it to fill in the numbers.
What?
Yes. This would come with the first edition basic D&D set. They'd give you one basic set of these plastic percentile dice. Here's a D4.
I ordered up a bunch of these red D4s. I don't know if you can see it on one of my bookshelves around here somewhere. I made health potions. So a health potion is 2d4 plus 2. Where's my camera? So I colored some resin, and I have these little whiskey tasting bottles. They're like little drams that you have GalaxyCon dice! You nerds! Oh, you absolute nerds! I love it!
I'll send you a set.
Now,
And then
the rocket ship and the D20, is that the 1 or the 20?
The 20. Come on.
Okay, just check it. Just check it.
It's 20. It's always 20.
And then
I love that so much. And those are metal. That looks like it's cast.
Yeah.
My
and then one last one, because we love you. I'll even send you these, which are very limited.
I can send you some of my health potions. Oh, I love him. He's a little super con guy.
I don't have anymore. I lost them in the sale.
Oh, I love him.
I have a few of these.
Oh, I would be honored. I will send you custom made. I have I started making terrain because I'm crafty and because I'm an artist and I monetize everything I do. I wanted to have an outlet for my creativity. And so when I needed to just like make something with my hands that wasn't a job, I started making terrain for my D&D minis, and I had my friends coming over. We would play D&D, but now with the quarantine, I have to play everything online. So all my minis are just like languishing on shelves and not being painted or used. Or
Tana, you gotta get a D20 handy?
I do.
All right, everybody, put your D20 up. I'm gonna take a screenshot of this.
Let me get it on my 20.
Okay, got it.
Looking at all the wrong ways. Oh,
yes.
Nerds. You have some nerds. So yeah, I'm a 5e person, and I've started DMing, and I'm running games for my very indulgent friends who love me and want to make me happy, are playing the game with me. Some of them love it, and my girlfriend is like, I'll do this, but if you kill my character, I just will never play again.
Oh. Well, I get, hey, so you're running it?
Yes. So I've so it's been a bit of a crash course learning all of the, oh my God, right here next to me, I have my screen because I need to be able to reference all the rules. So I have my little Dungeon Master screen next to me at all times.
Nice.
Well, it's I'm glad to hear you start on 5 because 4 is like.
Is it tough?
There's a reason why 4 was the smallest.
It's not Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
Patty and I come from a time of AD&D first edition.
Okay.
And then second edition. And 4 is not role playing.
No.
It's
no. They turned it into strictly a miniatures game, and they TSR was trying to bank on miniature sales, and they were taking a lot of the tabletop
Pathfinder exists.
Yep.
Because D&D went in this weird direction of getting away from being D&D, and now D&D's come back to being D&D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so my entry to it was the Adventure Zone. My brother, and me playing this funny game with their dad, and just the improv and the goofing, and Gerald, the Binacorn. I can't even with these guys. It was so funny, and so I chew through that. It's a beautifully told story. It has this completely surprise ending. Oh, and eventually after that, needing more content and more story, I transitioned to Critical Role Season 2. I didn't get into Critical Role Season 1 yet. I'm waiting on the animation for that to be my introduction to sort of Vox Machina. I know the characters. The Vox Machina Origins book, which I'm pointing to that you can't see, is also published through Dark Horse, who publishes LaGuardia. And so there is a beautiful overlap of my worlds. So I know about the story, but I didn't watch that game live. And last Thursday, they had their 100th episode. They're finally back. For me, since I sit at my house and draw all the time, Critical Role is Dungeons and Dragons, if your audience doesn't know. I don't know. But they do 5-hour episodes that are split into like 2.5-hour chunks. Mm-hmm. And for somebody that sits and draws all day, listening to a story that these professional voice actors that you know from all sorts of video games, listen to them goof with each other is just beautiful. And the storytelling is wonderful. And my whole universe.
I'll give you a bit of trivia.
Please.
Where's Matt Mercer from?
He's from Florida.
West Palm Beach, Florida.
Am I living in Matt Mercer's house?
You might be.
Could be.
You might be. Because every time he'd come to the show down in Miami with us, he'd be like, "Oh, I hate coming home."
Yeah, he was real
Which
cheap.
I totally understand. Like, Florida would not be. I have family that lives here, so I won't say it's a terrible place to grow up, but it might be a terrible place to grow up.
It's got its moments.
It's what you make of it.
It's who you find.
Yes, I don't know.
It's who you grow up with. It's what you make of it and who you associate with.
Yeah, I have friends of mine that I've met since moving to Florida are both like from this area of Florida. They're the kind of people that sort of like, they work at the high school next to the high school they graduated from. Like they are very much townies, and they're wonderful folks, of course. And they love the area. They love the weather. They can survive this heat in a way that I cannot survive. So it is all what you make of it.
What's been the craziest thing that's happened in one of your D&D campaigns?
Oh man. I have a friend who plays a chaotic monk purely as she plays herself, and so ends up sort of Leroy Jenkinsing everything. And like but doesn't think she's doing it, or like doesn't mean to, but just always like rushes in when everybody else is like, okay, let's get a plan, let's figure this out. And she's just like, fireballs. She's an fire genasi, so she can actually make flames happen. And
nice.
So I like having those sort of chaotic things. One of the most beautiful things is I was able to put together a game for my nephews who are just getting into all this nerdy stuff, and help them draw characters, right? Like they're experimenting with art, and it's been a way for me to kind of connect with my family, since most of them are up in the Northeast still, and I'm down in Florida. So that's been the most beautiful thing about the game. Nice. And I love that I can just stay connected and kind of, spitball with my friends, you goof with them. It's collaborative storytelling. It's everything that I love in the world.
Oh yeah, there's a reason why my old college group from years ago, but about every 2-3 years we get together and we play our game, and our dungeon master upgrades it to whatever the current system is. We skipped over 4th.
What are you playing? What's your character?
Oh, this character, High Father Hakad El Hashir Hassam, which translates as he who runs with the desert wolves and strikes with their fury, which was a retcon of the name I came up with when I was 19, Wolfspite.
I love it.
What Patty doesn't want to tell you. So the story with me and Patty is we've known each other a very long time and not known each other at all.
Yeah.
So Patty and I have really known each other for about 6 years. We met in 2014. Okay. However, we both worked in comic stores at the same time in South Florida in the 90s.
Yep.
We both went to the same coffee house and hung out in the same exact place. The difference was he was busy LARPing, and I was busy, playing chess and doing other things, and probably
separate
playing
nerd wheels, never overlapped.
Oh yeah. But we were both working at the big comic shops, just different ones in the same county. But yeah, I was when Vampire the Masquerade first hit in the scene and the live action LARPing stuff. I was running that stuff, and it was like we knew the same. We found out we knew some of the same people.
We know all of the same people.
It was like, how did we never
connect?
It was the damnest
love
thing.
This. Now, do you make your own cosplay stuff? Do you make your own costumes? Are you into the
back then? I'll tell you what, I'll pull up the picture. And I remind you, this is literally, it'll take me a few minutes, but
Patty's also a member of Starfleet. Patty, you got to get us one of those pictures.
Okay. All right. Give me a few minutes. I'll tell you what, let's start.
Patty,
we'll
get some cosplay stuff.
Talk about LaGuardia.
Okay, we're going to talk for a second about Patty.
Let's talk.
Okay, Patty does these. Patty's a cosplayer, like a full-on cosplayer, except Patty only wants to do characters and costumes that nobody's ever seen. So like he'll do Doctor Strange, but he'll do the 1978 TV movie Doctor Strange from the CBS TV movie. Right? On his Facebook, he's got a folder called like obscure cosplays. It's one of the albums, right? And and a cosplayer arcane, experimental, obscure, and always unprofessional. And so he'll do like Kolchak the Night Stalker, or like he'll do his Batman cosplay, but he's playing the mugger, Joe Chill. Like he's gonna be the Joe Chill cosplayer, or Chitty Bang Bang,
the child catcher,
the abominable Dr. Phibbs from 1971.
It's pronounced Fibes, you Philistine.
Sorry, or like, although I can show you. I mean,
Patty, you've got some serious dimples, my man.
Oh,
look at you.
Thank you.
That.
Bring this up. This is Patty from his Warhammer 40K cosplay.
See. Oh, you showing it?
I put it in private chat, Jude.
Oh, but it's not a link.
Okay. He can pull it though.
I bear with me. My Facebook just switched over to the new Facebook.
Yeah.
Like literally right 5 minutes before we began. So I'm like, I can't find my stuff.
Yeah. It's always a problem. I wish I didn't need a Facebook.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Mean mugging. Look at you. Look at that saw blade. Oh my dude. Look at that.
For the Imperium, for the Emperor.
Oh, that is exquisite.
Patty, I need you to get us a picture of you in your scant.
Yeah.
I'll who do I send it to? Do I send it to Vince?
Yeah, put the link in the chat or send it to Vince.
I'll send it to Vince.
Oh, I love it.
Send it to Vince. Where is my... If I can get this thing to catch on.
But yeah, no, Patty and I used to hang out at this coffee house, and I played D&D, and I played Champions, and I played all that stuff. But I was never a LARPer. That was a little too much for me.
Okay,
so while Patty's looking for that,
yes.
You got nominated. You're nominated. You got nominated for 2 Hugos.
So crazy.
So like you got your first Hugo nomination last year, and now you got another one.
Yeah, I know. Back to back in the same category. It might not be the same category, but it's for the same kind of thing, which is graphic novels, which is amazing. Oh, I love it. I love it. Did you make this yourself?
No, a dear friend of mine who I met at DragonCon. He and his husband are a wonderful, cute couple, and he does these scans. I got pretty good legs.
You got some good scans.
But at DragonCon every year, we're part of a whole crew. We have the USS Pantless.
Yeah.
And
nice.
all the guys, we all wear the unisex scants, which were seen in the background in first season Next Gen, and we're slowly phased out.
So do you know the story with the scants?
I do not.
Okay, so when Gene Roddenberry's working on Star Trek Next Generation.
Yeah.
And they're working on things, and they're putting women in pantsuits, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He said, why wouldn't, because he's like, everybody's kind of fluid and everybody would dress whatever, and we don't have the same social norms that we have in the 20th century. So if women are wearing pants, why wouldn't men wear skirts?
I did not know any of this.
There's a whole bunch of men in the background in first season TNG wearing scants. And so, but you always got to look in the background of Star Trek.
I did not know any of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You always have to look. Star Trek's best when you
I feel like I should know this. I feel like there should have been a newsletter or something.
So they have all these dudes wearing skirts called scants in the background of season 1. Now, what happens is they spent all their money making these first season costumes, which are like spandex.
Okay.
So like the first season, they're like really tight and it's really like it rides up. Season 3, they start changing to the collared uniforms, the Picard maneuver.
Yep.
Ones, the sweater things. When they start that, you'll start to see that there's a bunch of people in the background wearing first season costumes.
Okay.
With the spandex, and then you're starting to see like the main characters are all wearing the new uniforms. And because they didn't have the budget to change everything, so they slowly start to change over season 3 and 4 and 5. And so by season, I don't know, I don't remember exactly, but by season 4 or 5, you've got now everybody wearing the new costumes, and when they
Yeah.
do new ones, Roddenberry had passed, and so he was. They got rid of the scants.
So he was advocating for the scants the entire time he was alive.
Well, the idea was that it was a unisex uniform. Like, if you wanted to wear this thing, you could. It wasn't masculine or feminine. It was just whatever you were comfortable with. And I just sent Jude some pictures.
And we talked about, we talked about Roddenberry earlier being like a womanizer, right? Except the thing about Gene, as complicated, as difficult as some of his behavior was, and it was, if you watch old Star Trek, he's got women and men of every different color, creed, Oh
my goodness. How did I not know this? I was on a Star Trek, I guessed on a Star Trek podcast, but not in the first season. Maybe that's how I missed it. How did I not know that they wore scants? Is the name of this?
Yes, it's kind of a novelty thing. It's never really put at the forefront of it.
It's always in the background. It's never a main character.
Lord.
And the idea is
that was pretty foreground.
But that character doesn't have a name.
Right.
Right. He's just walking through the hall. So like, unless you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And Roddenberry's whole thing was to normalize the behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey man, I'm into it. I love it. How did I not know it existed? I love that you do that with your friends.
Here, I have a group shot. I'll send it to you.
Yes.
And it's the beauty
of the links aren't working. If you when you send the thing, I can see.
I'll send it to our producer.
And
that's the beauty of Trek.
It should be one of the very first panels that I had ever gone on. So I have these like spheres of not influence, but like spheres of life. And so there's my personal life, there's my professional life, there's, and they don't really overlap. And I didn't start getting like professional friends until I started going to comic book conventions, which happened kind of late in my career. I had already had some like indie successes before I ever really started going to shows. I had done Alternative Press Expo in California and some small stuff, but I had never really gone to a major show. And anyway,
did you do the first Duck Book?
I did the first Duck Book and I released it in Alternative Press Expo, and I want to say it was 2010.
Okay.
And I go to the show. Yeah. I got a table. Like I scraped together the money. I went to the table. They were having the announcements for the Prism Comics Queer Press grant that I had applied to. So I finished this book and I was applying for this grant, and I got a table at the show, and I didn't tell anybody about this. Like I didn't have anybody to tell. I took a friend and I went to California, and I am in the panel as Justin Hall and these guys who now became my friends in the comics community are announcing the winners. And they're like, and the winner for, the Queer Prism grant, whatever, this year is Tana Ford. And I like stood up and they were like, did you just rise out of the crowd? Like, this is the Oscars? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And I got so embarrassed. And they were like, we didn't even know you were going to be here. And they're awesome. Like, email someone. And I was like, I don't know how to do that.
That's awesome.
And so I became friends with them. So the very first show I went to, I had to like have a reason to be there. I wasn't ever a part of a space like that. And so I didn't know how to make myself have a place in that space. So I used I made a book. I'm going out for this award. I'm going to go to this show, which is clear across the country, and see what happens. And I met the most welcoming, warm community of people that has been building and growing and supporting me, and I get to support their work, and we see each other grow through a lifetime, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. But one of the early panels, one of the very first panels that I had ever been on was that the following year in Boston Comic Con, which was my hometown show, even though I don't think I had ever done it before. And there was a queer comics panel, the queer comics panel, where it was like, should we have queer comics? Or it was just like, queer is a thing. And so I was on it, and a guy named Joey Stern was on it, who would go on to run Geeks Out and put on FlameCon. And I just remember him being so funny. And we were talking about queer people. We were talking about tokenism, gay representation in comics and media and in Star Trek. And he's like, at this point, Roddenberry, should have given us just like in 10 Forward some, background queen who's like, it's time for margaritas. Like, even give me that guy, like there's no gay people in space. And there were episodes that dealt with gender fluidity, and I clearly did not know about men in skants. But I always remembered that joke as like it was a breakthrough moment for me that like I had friends that were into this thing that I was into and also wanted to see gay people in space. Look at you guys. It's so beautiful.
There's she's a cosplayer and kind of an entertainer. She's a cosplayer and entertainer. She goes by the name of Mad Moxie.
Okay.
And she's drag queen. She has the big poofy 60s hair.
Yeah.
And she identifies herself as, I'm the Enterprise's beautician.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so she's got a little cabaret act that she does, but it's pretty.
I love it. Like, and that's or in the early days when I first came into comics, we were having discussions like, give me literally any gay representation. I don't know if you guys watched the Netflix series Disclosure about trans people in media, but you should watch it. Everybody should watch it. It's amazing. Educate yourself. Do something. It's so good.
Not yet. I mean, I've kind of lived a little through it, but yeah, I
highly recommend it.
It's on my list. It's on my list.
Yeah, and they were talking about the problems with early representations of transgender people in media. And one of the trans guys was saying that their favorite show growing up was Ace Ventura. And they had, like something had happened and they were sick or something and they were going to be on the couch for a couple of days. They needed a comfort movie. So as an adult, like it was their favorite movie when they were 12, as an adult, they watched this movie. And I had also forgotten this. The entire end sequence is about Ace Ventura. Jim Carrey kisses a trans woman. It's revealed that they are, still have male genitalia. And he does this elaborate puking like scene. Yes. And like, it's over the top. And I remember like, I was like, holy shit, there is all of this like transphobia, trans hate at the end of this movie that I also had fond memories of. Like, I grew up at exactly that right time. Like, Ace Ventura was hilarious to me. And I had totally blanked on this being the representation of trans people. And how there is so much of it. And so like they show examples after examples. And I was like, fuck, no wonder we have all of these like deeply rooted, unpacked ideas of what is repellent or repulsive about difference and about people like that. And the response, one of the people that was talking about this issue said, there's a lot of problematic representation. The answer to it is one word: more. We need more representation of trans people, of intersex people, of, all different kinds. We need more of this stuff. I think so much of it gets put under a spotlight, and rightfully so, but partly because there's so little of it. And the stuff that's there, a lot of it's really shitty or complicated and hard and ugly in places. And so if we had better representation, if we had people whose experiences were that lived experience, you're going to get a more authentic story and maybe a more nuanced one.
Oddly enough, from the trans women that I've been involved with a trans woman for about 15 years. And I think the last one that she thought was really even was Candace Kane on Dirty Sexy Money about 7-8 years ago.
They bring that up.
They bring that up? Okay, good.
They bring that up. And in Dirty Sexy Money, Candace herself is talking about this, and it was her big moment. And, she's going to have this big scene, and all of her friends had come over for a big watch party, and they play it. And her first line in post, they had dropped her voice 2 octaves. So in order to really drive home the point that this is a trans woman and not a woman that would pass as a woman, right? Like, it was so and like, she is having a party to celebrate this thing, this accomplishment, this big thing that she's proud of. And they did that. And like, everyone in the party was like, oh my God, like hands on the shoulders. And I'm so sorry. And like, this stuff it's pervasive, and I don't know. And so the answer to it is more. We need more representation.
I agree that you need more, but and again, I'll say it. It needs to be normalized. It needs to be more in with everything else. It needs to be plopped into, like you said, Star Trek.
I am a gay that loves my little bubble, and I've had conversations with people in my community about Caitlyn Jenner, right? Like, Caitlyn Jenner's politics are particular and difficult for me as a person, but the visibility that woman brought to trans people across the globe cannot be understated. My personal feelings about her aside, that kind of visibility moves the needle in a way that and starts conversations in places that people are not having conversations about this stuff. It's actually, breaking down barriers or dissolving them a little bit.
No, it absolutely, Caitlyn.
But it's problematic.
It's very.
We need more. I would like more people that are trans to have jobs playing trans people in media, or just more. I don't know. Just open the gates, right? Like, let's stop gatekeeping this bullshit. Make good stories. Make compelling narratives. And
put characters in there that serve the story.
Yes.
And have a real representation of what the world looks like. Not everybody's office is all white.
But too many of them are, my friend. Too many of them very much are.
Right. We hosted Robin Lord Taylor a couple times, and I adore sitting with him. And we had this conversation on stage about how he was a little timid, he was a little trepidatious about taking the role and so I make it gay, but he was like, we both agreed. The nice thing was that he was a villain who was gay. It was separate. His gayness did nothing to cause or reflect his villainy. It was just exactly. It was trying to equalize and normal. It just here's a character. It's not the gay villain. It's not the gay penguin. This is the penguin, and that's all.
And he does play that character very, very well. One thing he is up against is the villainization of bisexual characters and characters who read as effeminate, right? Like, this is a thing. Look at Scar from Lion King. Look at Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective. The feminization of men and the equation to villainy is a trope that gay people have been aware of and fighting against for millennia. The Joker, right? The Joker and his bisexuality, the Joker himself having this complicated relationship with Batman and with the Harleys that are problematic, right? Like, it is almost inseparable.
Well, have you watched a Harley Quinn cartoon?
I have not watched the Harley Quinn cartoon.
I would love to hear what you think about the Harley Quinn cartoon, because it deals very much with this subject.
And is it, spoilers, I don't know. It's probably been out for a while, so if you don't want to be spoiled on it, don't listen, I guess, audience. Is this the cartoon where Harley and Ivy are actually together in a relationship?
Well,
ish.
Yes, but hang on.
Do it, man.
No, they do. They do. Hang on, they do. They do. We'll get to that. That's how season 2. Okay. Anybody who doesn't want to
spoil it for me. Spoil it.
It happens.
I mean, if you don't want to spoil, tune out.
It all leads up to it. And so it starts with Harley and the Joker together, right?
Yep.
And it's very obvious that the Joker and she and the Joker in this horrible abusive relationship.
Yes.
Where he really wants to Batman more than he wants to her, and he keeps her around as the trophy girlfriend, but he's ready to dump her at a moment's notice to get Bat's attention. Yep. And so there's the
seeds of this are all but overtly stated in Batman the Animated Series, right? Like, that is a germinating piece of media about this kind of thing. A Joker tries to kill Harley in a 1-for-1 abusive relationship, like in a kid's cartoon.
Right.
Exactly. And in the episode, and then, Harley, Ivy comes along and they have their big, like, girls' liberation moment. Like, the seeds of this thing
takes this further.
Yeah.
So Harley has this whole taking back her origin thing, where she has to basically create her own origin, because her origin is tied to this toxic relationship and this awful situation, and she has to decide that her origin is hers and not a part of his story. And then she goes off on her own, and then the Joker spends the next 2 seasons trying to murder her, and to get revenge for her daring to leave him. Meanwhile, he's still trying to bang Batman. And then she and Ivy become friends, and they become best friends. And then things happen, and Ivy's trying to be in this relationship with Kite Man because that's normal, and he's sweet and he's stable, and Harley's. And then it's about how they have to just realize, they come together at the end. Yeah. Season 2. And it's really, I think it's pretty amazing. I think it's great. And Patty and I are not the world's biggest Harley fans because we don't like the bones of the character. Yeah. We don't like the original intent of the character. Okay. Actually, the original.
I'm more Marvel than DC. I know the big characters. I saw the Harley movie. I thought it was okay. I thought it was fun. But they're not. That fandom is not something I know.
But basically, if you take Harley's original concept, and then the way she grew in popularity, it's like there's some really
they Deadpooled her.
Yes. Yeah, they really Deadpooled her, and then it's like, but it comes from a really bad place, and they pushed her out of it since then. But those bones are still kind of there for comic guys.
It's like Silk. Yes, it's exactly like Silk. They sexualize that character to a point. Like the original character is in the jester outfit. And
I love the classic like Batman in the animated series that Harley Quinn is just
so they
iconic.
They sexualize her and they turn her into a Deadpool, DC's Deadpool, and I Patty and I both did not enjoy that characterization, and I much prefer her when she's a stronger woman dealing with the toxic, the psychological aspects of having been in that relationship, coming into her own,
unpack that stuff. It's fascinating, and I think it speaks to a lot of people. I think that there's the potential to tell great stories with that character in specific, even given her problematic creation or like why she was created. Well, for sure,
in this animated series,
you have to do it. Like you have to actually put bones into your work. You have to actually have a story that the characters can work inside of. In
this animated series, they've created a bubble continuum, a version of the DC universe. Okay. Which is very, very, a very wacky sort of skewed sense to it. If you ever watch the Venture Brothers, it reminds me a lot of that.
Okay.
Where so this is one of my favorite Batmans.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a version of the DC universe where you can have the Legion of Doom, and everybody knows that Lex Luthor is a villain, but nobody does anything about it. He just goes about his business. But it enables all the things that Mike and I used to dislike about Harley Quinn work in this version of the DCU.
Yeah. Okay. So if you just keep it as like campy high comics,
it is yes. And everybody hates Dr. Psycho because he's basically a rapist, and everybody knows that he's a misogynistic asshole, including Darkseid.
Still sounds super problematic for a kid's cartoon, but I haven't seen it.
This is not a kid's cartoon. This has more F-bombs than an Eddie Murphy stand-up special.
Okay.
I would not let anybody. No.
Okay. No. That's on me. I don't know the source material.
This animated series.
This is very rated R.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I will check it out.
Yeah, I think I think we'll have next time we have you on, and I certainly hope that we'll have you on next time. Yeah, we'd really like to get your take on it.
Yeah, and cartoons are some of my favorite consumable media. I ran out of Bob's Burgers, and in this quarantine, it was like my safe go-to place. And so I just watch, old Bob's Burgers episodes. But after a while, you've just seen them all. And Rick and Morty, sometimes you have to be in the right headspace. I have to be in the right headspace for it. And I find it's a little less palatable right now just because there's so much nihilism that, Rick's nihilism is just a little like it's just the world is actually this shitty. So watching it also it isn't the escapism I'm looking for.
It's not what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I want a goofy, family dynamic with musical numbers.
It's like a car at 50,000 miles, and you never had the tires aligned.
Mm-mm.
It still runs fine. There's something just pulling.
It just doesn't feel quite right.
One side of the road, and it's like, and you can't put your finger on it.
Nope.
I still watch it. I still enjoy it.
Yep. And but that's those are my go-tos. And I find, I don't know, queer media, I don't know why I just thought of this. Killing Eve, the most recent season of Killing Eve, I think that they got some pretty correct criticism that they were queer baiting us. They had this relationship between these two women, but it was always kind of a will they, and we knew that they wouldn't. And this season they went for it. And I thought in a way that served the story and extended both the characters in interesting ways. So I was here for it.
Let me ask you this much. Yeah. From your perspective, and I don't assume it as from an LGBT, just from your perspective, is there a show on right now that you feel like, if it's not getting 100% right, at least it seems earnest in trying to get it right and authentic and entertaining and three-dimensional fleshed out characters? Is there something?
So it's hard, right? Because everything is sensational. So talking about Killing Eve, it's all about a sociopath, right? It's all about a sociopath and a psycho killer or a hunter of psycho killers. So there's nothing realistic about that necessarily. But I think that the writing has always been fresh. The woman that played Yasha Greyjoy is also the daughter in Killing Eve, and so it's weird to see her in a sort of demure position. I don't know. She was also in a show called Gentleman Jack, I think is the name of the show, and it's about an actual lesbian that existed and kept these detailed journals, but there was like a cipher, and so you have hundreds of writings, and she was the first woman to marry another woman in the Catholic Church in England, I want to say. And so it is a docu-series. No, it is a show about real events that is sensationalized, but based on actual material in the real world. And so I find that fascinating, but I like period pieces. I don't know. And then a lot of the stuff that I like doesn't have queer representation, really. I mean, I'm a human person.
Fine. Yeah, that's I'm just saying, if there's anything from either LGBT standards or
Insecure on HBO is one of the best series running. The writing, again, the female friendships, that's my whole jam. The complicated relationships between exes and how they kind of stay in your friend group and how you deal with them once they're you were shitty to them, but then they were shitty to you, but then you kind of both grow up, and then there's also all these other snippets of dialogue that are just beautifully done. So I don't know. Those are the things that are sort of feeding me these days when I'm not watching 5 hours of Dungeons and Dragons.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, artists are definitely a captive audience by nature of your profession.
My girlfriend would tease me because I went through a stint where I was really into Parks and Rec, and I just sort of discovered the series. It was ending or something. But I came to it late, and so I was able to chew through a bunch of the seasons, sort of all in a row. And she would come home from work. She works in a hospital. So she's around people all day, and she's, doctoring and doing social things. And I'm alone with the dogs. And so she would come in and I'd be like, oh my God, Leslie did this funny thing today. And then she called Anne Pretty Anne. And then Andy came back and he said he was hiking in the mountains in Kentucky. And she's like, oh my God, Tana, these are just characters on a TV show. They're not, it's like, you're telling me what happened with your friends today. And I was like, but we were hanging out all day. So I get a little weird, maybe. I don't know.
You're just into it. You like what you like, and you're a fan, and that's what fans do.
Yeah,
that's what we do as fans.
And have you seen I'm Not Okay With This?
No, I don't think I've heard of it. What is it?
It's a Netflix show. Sophia Lillis.
Okay.
And it's based on a graphic novel.
Okay. I Am Not Okay With This.
Yes.
I feel like I've heard of it or seen it.
And it's a coming of age show with superpowers, and a lesbian lead.
I wonder if I might have been talking to my friend Kevin about this. He usually knows all the queer media that is coming out, and
Sophia Willis from It.
Nice.
And then also from It, White Olaf plays Stan.
Okay.
And Sophia has telekinetic powers.
Nice.
The character, and she's in high school, and it's her. The first season is out, and it's the story of her basically coming to terms with her powers and coming to terms with the fact that she's gay.
Yeah.
And in fact, the White Olaf character is kind of in love with her, and they kind of have a little thing, and then she figures out that she's not really into guys.
Yeah. I will check it out. I look forward to giving you my synopsis when I have it. Have you guys seen Sex Education? I think it's a Netflix thing. It might be a Hulu thing. It's Gillian Anderson, and she's a single mom of a high school kid. And,
no, but I haven't seen it yet. But Gillian,
there's 2 seasons, and if you're in, I think it can be hit or miss. I loved it, but I think it can be hit or miss.
I have to watch it because maybe it has been suggested that she would do one of our events. Maybe
love her.
And then maybe if we brought in some of her cast members from that show. So
and you should. And they deal with a lot. So it's about sex education. That's what it's called. And what's the elevator pitch? She is a single mother who is a sex therapist, and she's raising a teenage son. And he starts giving kids in his school sex therapy based on stuff he's gleaned from his mom. And so so it's a lot about high school relationships, first time sex, it's kind of cutting edge stuff. So, it's adult material, but I think that the way that they portray kids is really great and nuanced. The complicated conversations, there's gay representation, there's fluidity. There's also, a character that's weirdly into tentacles and things, and it's kids kind of taking care of each other as well. And so the whole thing as a unit is just really good and compelling and complicated and nuanced, just like real life. Plus, Gillian Anderson is amazing in it. So I highly recommend it. There's 2 seasons out, and they do ableist representation. They have all sorts of stuff. Poverty is represented really well here, and the effects on people, slut shaming, high school relationships, adult relationships, complicated relationships of all kinds. And it's really well written, I think. So that's my cup of tea.
So we're going to have to wrap up in a minute. But
we have been talking for a minute, you guys.
Yes.
And we didn't even get to LaGuardia.
We'll have to have a part 2.
I also do comic books. Go buy my stuff. I might win the Eisner Award at the end of the month.
Yes. So where do people find you?
Yes, you can find me online. You can order my books if you want me to send you a typed letter. Order something through my online shop at tanaford.com. And if you mention GalaxyCon, I will type you up a poem or something from my typewriter machine. So buy something from me, and I'll send it to you. Limit 10. I'm not going to write a million letters, but if you do that, I'll write you a letter. Just mention GalaxyCon. So you can find me at tanaford.com and follow me on Twitter at Tana Ford. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram, although I'm not quite good at using Instagram yet. I'm learning. And both of those are tana.ford. No, it's tanaford.designs. Look at that.
And
I know what I am.
Yes, you are. And we talked about Laguardia a little bit, and everybody should read it. It's a graphic novel. It's about, it's an alien immigration story.
Yes, it is. It is about integration. It's an allegory for what is happening right now. Our second issue is called The Immigration Ban. It is centered on the voices of others and the integration and the good that can come from integration, but also the things that kind of separate us and pull us apart as well. Yes, and it's written by Nnedi Okorafor. She's in development right now with HBO. working on one of the collisions of my worlds was I had reference for Tesla's like self-driving cars are a thing in the universe we created.
Yeah.
And Nnedi sent me a picture of her and George R. R. Martin in like his Tesla, and I was like, oh man, my worlds are colliding. Anyway, so comics are wonderful. Please pick up my book.
Order and Duck. Hang on.
I'll type up.
They got to get Duck.
Oh yes, and
you're working on the third.
Yes,
I'm working up the third book now.
Yes, I'm working on the graphic novel that I began my career with, which is about lesbian culture and queer spaces in a queer life lived, and the work is going really well. It's a long form graphic novel, so I've pivoted away from doing interior art, and I'm really loving it. I think it's hard to have perspective on it. Because I'm making it, it's sort of up to my elbows in making it. But it's the most beautiful thing I can make. I'm taking my time, like with the different scenes. One of the things that takes place in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and Provincetown is surrounded on three sides by water. It's the peninsula at the very tip of Cape Cod. And so the light is a big part of the atmosphere of the feeling there. And so I'm really allowing myself artistically to explore the space. And so that's what I'm working on these days, which is a perfect thing to be working on in isolation. And yeah.
Very good. Very good. Can I add one thing about LaGuardia?
Please.
I've seen sci-fi stories talk about the integration, going all the way back to the Alien Nation, the movie and the TV series, which I was a really big fond of.
Okay.
This fascinated me and still fascinates me because it tackles the idea of immigration from aliens on a planetary scale, but still there are nations.
Yes.
We're also dealing with humans and human conflict and levels this too. So, and not just like one species of aliens, and we're talking humanoids, we're talking plant life, which factors very heavily into this.
Yes.
And there are a lot of levels, and kudos to the writing, and absolutely kudos to you as an artist for having to design those aliens, having to differentiate them. Yeah. You've got a lot of stuff going on in the background. I look forward to this continuing to get these accolades, and I look forward to hopefully knocking this up into a higher level of awareness of your skills. Because I would love to. I could think of a half dozen titles and characters and properties. I would really like to see you. I would really like to see you tackle.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I made it as beautiful a thing as I could. I'm glad that comes through.
Very much so. Very, very much so. And it's a sweet. It's a sweet story with just a little bit of salt.
For those, no, I don't know if I can say this. I was gonna say, nope, I can't. No.
You'll say it up next time you're on.
Next time you're on. And hopefully we can introduce you as Nebula or HUGO Award winner.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Did they still are they still the rocket ships?
They are, and oh man, and but very.
I have a thing for rocket ships.
It's. I am so excited. So
and not to dismiss the Eisners either. To anyone in the Fiona community out there, we love our Eisners.
This is my first Eisner nomination as well, which is a big milestone for me, and my second HUGO Award nomination. I'm a little nervous. Am I always going to be a bridesmaid, or are we going to bring it home this year? We'll see. But I'm very proud of the work that we've done on this stuff, and the fact that LaGuardia was based on a Will Eisner book just feels very, I don't know. Yeah. It just feels really right. So thank you guys for having me on.
Will Eisner did live in South Florida towards the end of his life. So,
Yes,
so many overlaps, you guys.
He did live down here with us. Mm-hmm. All right. So stick around. We'll see you backstage, and thank you for being here. And everybody buy Tana's books. You know where to find her.
And, yes. And tomorrow night, tune on in. We have a special bonus episode this week. Tomorrow, we'll be sitting with who won't we be sitting with?
Well, we're at AWA Studios. Axel Alonso, Mike Diodato, Ben Percy, and Shoot Over.
Yes.
So
definitely check it out. You guys are the best.
All right, kids.